about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Smello, smello, smello.
What's happening, Denise Simon? You sound good with your new microphone.
Well, I wish I could afford the Yeti cooler after buying the Yeti microphone.
Is it spelled the same way?
Yep.
Y-E-T-I?
Yep.
I wonder if it's the same company.
Somehow I don't think that they would make the stretch from going to microphones to coolers.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, I'm sure this conversation's fascinating for all of our loyal listeners. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be the first to welcome all of you to tonight's Drive Time Situation Report. You've got on one end of the conversation the stellar, the ever-gifted, the talented, the beautiful, the tennis player, Denise Simon. And on the other end of this conversation, you've just got me, so, what can I say about that? Anyhow, I am driving home after a grueling day at the office. Denise, I've got rain. The streets are slick. It's an ugly night here in Atlanta, Georgia. But I have called in, ladies and gentlemen, for my situation report tonight. Now, clearly, there's nothing going on in the news that Denise and I can talk about. And when that day finally comes, if it is tonight, we'll talk about fascinating things like ping pong or dog poop or anything else that happens to come to our mind. But Denise, I have a feeling that there's plenty for you to gab about tonight.
Gab? Indeed so.
All right. Well, before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, those of you that listen to the show regularly know that we timestamp this show so that you know exactly when this information is being spewed forth by the ever-popular Denise Simon. So, Denise, as only you can do, timestamp the show and let's get after it.
I'd love to. It is 9:12 p.m. on the 31st day of July in the year of our Lord, 2018.
All righty then. So what's happening, Nisi? Because as usual, I've been buried in rock and roll stuff, and I haven't had time to check Drudge or listen to anything on the radio or check out social media or nothing. So you got a lump of clay tonight. Mold me.
Well, there was a kind of a cool thing that happened. We know that President Trump was at the fairgrounds in I guess some kind of a major, huge pavilion there. I've never been to the fairgrounds in Tampa. And I don't know how many people were there. I'm still trying to get some kind of a report. I did see where people were lining up to go into the place around 4 o'clock, which is when apparently the doors or gates or something were opening. But he clearly came to, I would say, promote Ron DeSantis, Congressman Ron DeSantis, who's running for governor for the state of Florida, against Adam Putnam, which is kind of a weird thing because we have our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who's a very good friend of Donald Trump's, and she's actually campaigning for Putnam. So we have a little bit of a divide here, which is really very peculiar. But Putnam was not there tonight. Ron DeSantis was. And Trump, he clearly was promoting more than once Ron DeSantis, and Ron DeSantis showed up and gave, probably a 90-second little spiel, which was fine. But one of the more fun things that happened at the rally is our little friend, Mr. Acosta from CNN, who loves to yell and scream at all of these kind of rallies. um, and report from them, and then he yells and screams at the White House press briefings. He was standing up on kind of a riser reporting for CNN, and a handful of black Trump fans started a chant, and then a lot of other ralliers joined in, and the chant was CNN sucks. And I happen
wait
to
a
see
minute.
that.
Hold on a second. Hold on. You said that this chant was started by black Trump supporters?
Yes.
Okay. All I've been hearing is that Trump is a racist.
Well, during his talk, there were a handful of blacks sitting right behind him. So they were in television view the entire time. In fact, several people held up signs. Blacks for Trump.
Okay. So wait a minute. I mean, this is a news break, Denise, don't you think?
Well,
the left wing and Maxine Waters, who happens to be a black person, has labeled Donald Trump a racist. But you're telling me that in Tampa, in the South, that Trump had strategically placed black people behind him, black people that were holding up signs that said black people for Trump. And the icing on the cake is that we've got black folks that started a chant behind Jim Acosta that CNN sucked.
Well,
so
here's the
fascinating. This is not computing. It's not
gets
computing.
better.
Help me out here.
It actually gets better, because the fellow that actually took the video is a black videographer / photographer for the Tampa Bay Times. And so he posted his video. I guess it came off his cell phone, and he posted it at 5:20, way before the thing even started, because Trump didn't start talking until about 5 minutes after 7. And so Jim Acosta is standing up on this riser, and here comes this chant of CNN sucks. I don't know how long it went on, but this reporter for the Tampa Bay Times, his video was 27 seconds long. When I clicked on it, Mr. Don, there were already 277,000 views.
Oh my gosh. All right. So not only, I mean, Denise, this is a revelation. I mean, for months and months and months and a couple of years, we have been preached to by the mainstream media, those of the ilk of, say, MSNBC and CBS and CNN. We have been preached to that Donald Trump is in fact a racist, almost to the point that any of the Donald Trump supporters are racists. And tonight on the Drive Time SITREP, you're telling me that this could be bogus information, that in fact Trump may not be a racist?
Unless we have, I would say some of these NFL football players or NBA basketball players calling those fellow brothers in Tampa Uncle Toms. I mean, that may come out tomorrow or even tonight on CNN or MSNBC. We don't know.
Wow. This, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know about you guys, but this is mind-numbing, breaking, cutting-edge information that we are finding out from Denise Simon right now. The fact that for over 18 months, I would say closer to 2 years, that we have been inundated with what appeared to be factual information from the mainstream media that Donald Trump and all of us that support him are racist. And tonight, July 31st, 2018, Denise Simon, it appears that you are telling me that this could all be fake news, that Donald Trump does not appear to be a racist. As a matter of fact, he's got black people that are attending his rallies, those rallies that are being mocked by the left, and that good people like you and me, good American citizens that don't have a bigoted bone in our bodies, tonight we learn that, in fact, we are not racist. I got to tell you, Denise, this is one of the most uplifting, motivating Drive Time SITREPs I think I've ever gotten from you in the 6 years that I've received them. I actually feel good about myself for the first time in 6 years.
I'm so happy I could do that for you. We did have one protester, however, that was removed, all by herself. That's the only one that I saw. She looked to be either one Palestinian sympathizer, or she could have been a Palestinian, given her garb, and she may have certainly shared some kinship with our lovely friend Linda Sarsour. But I don't know what it was that
you don't think it was Linda, though, do you?
No. And I don't know what it was.
Linda wannabe.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a sisterhood there. And so I don't know what it was that she was doing that she got in her protest that she got removed, but the whole place paused. And of course the cameras went over and watched her being escorted out. So, that looked to be, from what I could tell, the only interruption, that we had in the rally tonight.
Let me ask you this. When they removed the Linda Sarsour wannabe lookalike, did any of those black Trump supporters applaud or cheer or even grin?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so these black Trump supporters did display jocularity when the Linda Sarsour lookalike was exited stage left from the venue.
Along with everybody else, yes.
Ooh, okay, we're back to being racist again. And now all of these cats that are going to be labeled Uncle Toms by MSNBC and CNN, they're going to be racist too.
Well,
I'm all of a sudden getting down. Can you bring me back up from my down?
Well, no. I mean, you can always trot on over and watch the reporting on MSNBC or CBS or ABC or CNN or NBC or any of the others to see what it is that they have to say about the rally tonight. It was, I think, to be honest with you, it was the first one that I have watched and listened to all the way through. And I mostly did it because of Ron DeSantis. I don't really have a dog in this hunt on who is governor for Florida. Both of the candidates, Adam Putnam and Ron DeSantis, are good guys, to be honest with you. Adam Putnam does have a little bit of a scandal in his term as being Commissioner of Agriculture in the state, and that has to do with over a year's worth of background checks in the state not being done for concealed carry or to buy a weapon. And they blamed it on...
Putnam, how do you spell Putnam? Putnam?
Yes.
Okay. He sounds like a white guy to me, and Ron DeSantis clearly has some kind of Latino background. So I think that we ought to support Ron so that we're not labeled.
I think
racist.
He might be actually more French than he would be Latino, DeSantis, but I don't know. And I did not know this.
Hold on. All right, let's pretend he's of a Hispanic background, okay? Even though Hispanic is a fake word, it's a made-up word. I think that it was made up during the Carter administration, if I'm not mistaken. But let's pretend that he's Hispanic so that we show favoritism toward the people of color, or at least moderately darker skin, than say you're pretty dark. You're actually probably darker than DeSantis, aren't you?
I would say.
What? Because and we need to take a minute for the listeners here and really delve into this. What tone do you think your skin tone is? Because you're clearly not white.
Not anymore.
You're not even you're not beige or mocha or anything like that. You're much more toward burnt sienna or kind of a dark caramel color, wouldn't you say?
Well, one, when you live in Florida, it just happens by living here. But then when you play tennis at least 4 times a week, it just happens. But I will tell you, so you and the listeners understand, because my feet are in tennis shoes probably 60 hours a week, I have paper white feet. And I could cure that by wearing more flip-flops and being out in the sun, but I don't. So I have white feet. Okay.
Well, so I guess what you're
it's an important distinction.
Is that your feet might be the giveaway.
It is.
That you could pose as a person of color until you took your shoes off. And then they would go, "You fraud. You're a fraud," right?
Or unless I took my watch off, because, yeah, I have a white wrist.
Right. Yeah, that I seem to remember. Okay. All right. This is, I bet the listeners at
riveting.
This point maybe have turned us
It's
off.
riveting information.
All right. Well, that's great news, though. I mean, I am thrilled to know that, that Donald Trump has got all types of supporters, black, white, farmers, whatever it is. Black farmers are supporting Donald Trump. That's awesome news. And clearly it was a big turnout down there in Tampa.
I don't know what the crowd size was. He did say, however,
it look full?
Well, it's hard to tell based on where the cameras are set. So, I've not been in that building, so I don't have a context. But he did say, and this is the first time that it has happened, those that had a ticket and could not get into the building, they did something a little different this time. And that is that they brought in some tents of some kind, or some kind of canvas covering, and put it outside the building so people that couldn't get in still could be part of the event. And then they had some big streaming video screens out there so they could still hear him. They just weren't inside the building. So in order to
I don't know, Denise, when you go to that extent and you put video screens up there and you've got the masses huddled together like George Orwell's 1984, this sounds a lot like Donald Trump might be a dictator. I don't know. I can't say for certain, and I'm speculating on this, but based on what you're telling me, I think Donald Trump might be a dictator. What say you?
Well, at least he did say he's returning the power of the government back to the people tonight. And I was glad to hear it, because he doesn't say it often enough, but I was glad to hear it again.
I don't know, Denise. This sounds really sketchy to me. He can say things like that, but I think what he probably means is that I'm a dictator and we're going to make you huddle together under tents. Next thing you know, we're going to be ripping children away from their mothers while they're standing under these tents, watching the big screen TVs of the dictator. It can happen. Crazier things have happened, Denise. I'm serious about
it
this.
was a little
I'm
crazy,
serious.
because about the time he landed, part of Tampa Bay was under a ridiculous thunderstorm. And where I was, I got about 4 inches of rain in the span of about an hour. And I could tell because of where the pool level went up. It was dramatic. And I looked at some live video, but it wasn't raining in Tampa at the time when he landed. But then the weather went that direction. So I don't know whether those poor people had to stand out in the rain that were outside or not. I have not seen that video.
Maybe not, because they had the tents.
Correct.
But, there was a little subtle comment a nugget that you placed in there that I think the listeners need to be made aware of. And that is, you discussed your pool, which means to all of the listeners and to me, Denise, that you are a wealthy white woman that's posing as a woman of color until you see your wrist or your feet.
Okay, Don.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get serious here. I know we got to go to this network break for Dash Radio here in a minute, but Denise, why don't you give me a recap of anything you might have heard regarding this speech in Tampa and how the mainstream media is spinning that into a disaster for Trump?
I can't speak to how they're spinning it because I don't travel on over to those networks. My husband does the channel surfing, so he might be able to tell, but I don't know. I haven't spoken to him. But even when
what color is he? What color is he, please?
He's not quite as tan as me.
Is he trying to pass as a person of color too?
No, because he has white hair. He's a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Well, listen, black people and Spanish people can have white hair, especially when they get older. But he's not trying to pass himself off like some people that I know as a person of color.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. All right. We got about 3 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, before we go to break. We've been having a lot of fun in this first segment, which, quite frankly, Denise, I don't remember the last time that we did.
We did when we talked about the bouncing baby Boeing.
That's right. That's
was
right. We did. And
that was a Russian repo.
And the quail that they were injecting with something, cocaine.
Yeah. To determine their sex life.
But, when we get back from the break here, let's get real serious about stuff, because there is a lot going on that I know that you haven't touched on. You got 3 minutes. I just checked the timer. What can you tease us with for when we get back at the bottom of the break?
Well, we had a very interesting breaking story today that I will explain, having to do with Russia and Facebook. I would say if you own some stock in Facebook, it's probably too late at this point to sell it, because it's clearly going to have some tanking repercussions here with
worse
Facebook.
Than it did just worse than it already has, huh?
Yeah.
So sad, Jeff. So sad.
So it's a bad situation, and it's really quite fascinating. And I'll talk about some things that the government is doing with all things Russia, China, and Iran. It's a very serious. So we had the levity in the first segment. So we're going to get a little more serious here in the second segment, because there's some fascinating things that are happening in government that I've seen some big patterns here that need to be explained when it comes to national security.
And what about, and we still got a little bit of time, what about, didn't the Manafort trial start today? Do you know anything about what's going on with that?
It did. They set a jury pretty quickly, and the trial began almost immediately. Now, let's remember, what he is on trial for has nothing to do with Trump. It has nothing to do with Russia collusion. It only has to do with essentially bank fraud and money laundering and those kinds of things.
There was what appears to be quite a bit of that, right?
Quite a bit. Something in excess of about 60 million, at least. And I don't have a problem with it. Manafort has always been a slime ball. So,
well, yeah, but the bottom line is this. If Manafort has done something that is illegal, he needs to be popped and he needs to be convicted.
Correct.
Okay?
Correct.
What we need to have happen, though, is that the mainstream media, which they're not going to, will be able to discern publicly the difference between Manafort being a bad egg and committing potential criminal activities and not linking him obsessively to Donald Trump.
See, people need to understand, though, he was a non-paid political advisor for the Trump campaign for only about 90 days. He did successfully, I might add, produce and direct and launch the Republican National Convention, and directly after that, he was gone.
Yeah. All right. We got to jump to break. We got to go to break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back for the second half of the Drive Time SITREP. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
Hi, thank you for listening. My name is Ron Phillips, and I'm the owner and operations manager of Talk America Radio. It is with great pride that I offer you this 24/7 stream of some of the finest talk radio programming in the country, but I need your support. We are a listener-supported network. That means we need your help to continue to offer the quality programming you're hearing right now. If you're able, please visit talkamericaradio.us and click the Support Us button. Your donation will go a long way in helping us continue to share the American voice. Thank you.
This is Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience. When I'm not debating with Donna Fiducia about politics, I listen to Cowboy Logic Radio. Why, you ask? Because outside of my blog, founderscode.com, and my own radio show, the Denise Simon Experience, Cowboy Logic is by far the most entertaining and informative radio show on planet Earth. Plus, Don makes me feel guilty if I don't listen to his radio show every week.
Hi, this is Donna Fiducia, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. For 28 years, I was in the mainstream media, most recently as an anchor at the Fox News Channel. No more. Ladies and gentlemen, the mainstream media has completely failed the American people. Radio networks like Talk America Radio will not fail you. Radio shows like Cowboy Logic Radio will not fail you. Check out the entire roster of over 60 weekly radio shows by visiting talkamericaradio.us. That's talkamericaradio.us.
TalkAmericaRadio.us.
This is Denise Simon. 18 hours a day, I live in a world as an intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. Intelligence analyst. What I find is reprehensible. What I find is terrifying. What I find is treasonous. 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 The mainstream media has completely failed the American people. Failed the American people. Failed the American people. Failed the American people. Join me for the Denise Simon Experience every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are now in the home stretch. Actually, I've been in the home stretch since I left my office. The home stretch of the Drive Time SITREP. You've got on one end of this conversation the fabulous Denise Simon, who we have determined during the last segment to be a person of color imposter. We're going to try to determine over the next few weeks who she is actually trying to emulate herself after, that of a Hispanic individual, maybe Middle Eastern, maybe just a high yellow or a red bone black person. We just don't know yet. But we're going to get to the bottom of who Denise Simon really is. And you've got on the other end of this conversation myself, Don Neuen. By the way, Denise and I each have our own radio shows that we have once a week. The Denise Simon Experience that you can hear Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. She's got fascinating guests that she interviews. And by having such great guests, she makes up for me on Wednesday nights. And then I've got a show that I host with the beautiful Donna Fiducia, and that's called Cowboy Logic Radio. And you can listen to our show on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. All right, Denise, before we went to break, you kind of laid out some of the things you want to talk about. In the immortal words of our buddy Chris Cuomo, what do you say we just get after it?
All righty. So here we are on the Drive Time Situation Report channel, and we're going to talk about Facebook. 2 weeks ago, it seems that some kind of an investigative team over at Facebook identified 8 pages and 17 profiles on Facebook. Those 17 profiles are now up to 30, which could necessarily grow again. But those respective accounts on Facebook had more than 290,000 account followers. Now, these profiles, if you will, are of, it appears, from first investigative scrutiny, and making attributions is one of the hardest things that you do in the cyber realm, but it can be done. It looks like this is a Russian, again, operation that learned some lessons from what they were doing from their troll factory, the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg. And so here they were trying to hide themselves just a little bit better. But whatever investigative team they have over at Facebook has, in fact, identified up to 30, and it may be more. This may be growing. And so they're trying to identify the specific actor that was behaving exactly like the Internet Research Agency was in the 2016 campaign. There are lots of similarities, and that is part of what they do when they begin to look at attribution on who these people are. But there are also some differences, and that includes IP addresses. And IP addresses are the tough one because they're very easy to spoof. In fact, some of the talent is able to take that IP address that they're operating from, and they reverse it to the IP address of the user that they're hacking or they're phishing. So they have some internal teams, and probably will seek some outside help, maybe even from FBI, but I'm not too sure that Facebook wants to necessarily use FBI, but they will continue to investigate this. Now, one particular Facebook account or Facebook page, if you will, was called the Resistors. Now, what does that necessarily sound like? Well, we have a liberal, progressive, Marxist wing class of people out there that are resisting, meaning the Trump administration. But we also have the conservative side because we are resisting government intrusions. So we have to look very carefully at what that page resistors really means. I have not seen them because Facebook has already taken them down. But this page, apparently resistors, featured an image of Trump with the text, "If Trump wants to beat Barack Obama's Twitter record for the most liked tweet, he only needs to tweet 2 words, I resign." The same page was created for an event for counter-protest to the upcoming Unite the Right rally in Washington. So you see, it's playing both sides there. And it's an inauthentic admins of the Resistors page connected with the admins from 5 legitimate pages to co-host the event. So there's early patterns, meaning there's language, there's tactics, there's it's almost like handwriting. I mean, there's some commonalities here. And so they also have pinpointed where there's at least $11,000 worth of ads on Facebook. Now, remember, little Mr. Mark Zuckerberg said that he wasn't going to take foreign ads anymore, which means if he's identified, and their ads aren't very expensive, but if he's going to take these ads to promote political causes leading up to the midterms and because of the midterms, then he needs to re-look at that to see if those ads got in without anybody paying attention. So Facebook's in trouble.
Second. Let me ask you something regarding some of these fake pages, because all of us almost every day are receiving friend requests from clearly bogus individuals.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, there's also a big difference between a personal Facebook page and a like page that would have many, many more followers and people that are, liking that particular page. But how do we know, Denise Simon, that this is not limited to Russian trolls that are sitting in the IRA building in St. Petersburg, but rather are operatives here in the United States that may or may not be Russian or Chinese or North Korean, that are people in the United States that are American citizens that are actually trying to disrupt and cause problems, given the fact that they saw how much of a degree of chaos that Russia was able to create with this IRA. I mean, clearly there are people that hate Trump so badly that they will do absolutely insane things that you and I have been seeing and our listeners have been seeing for months and months and months now. Why would we limit that to Russia and not say maybe some of these kooks are over here doing this stuff?
Well, let me put it to you this way. You have pro-Soviet, you have Russian orbits, people that are thoroughly enjoying doing this kind of thing. Now, could they be in the United States? That's possible. But there are some remarkable tactics that cyber professionals, cyber experts are able to apply. And I've seen some of them, but it's way out of my sandbox on how they can look at the fingerprints, the footprints, and the trails and go backwards and see what has really happened here. It is really kind of a fascinating thing because a couple of weeks ago, we had the Aspen Security Forum in Colorado, which was about a 3.5 day event. And there were some remarkable experts that were part of the guest list of speakers. And it was an awful lot of focus was put on the rogue countries, meaning Russia, Iran, China, North Korea, and so forth. Then we had a report that came out last Friday from DNI Coates, who put out, I think, about a 21-page report on those very same countries and the tactics they're using to continue to insurge into the United States and infect politically the United States. From that 21-page report, they boil it down to a 2-page fact sheet. It's posted over there on founderscode.com, by the way. Monday, I was part of a nationwide CERT, which is a computer emergency response team, I think it's called, which is a division of the Department of Homeland Security. I was invited to be part of this nationwide conference call, and it had everything to do with Russia this time. And they made a presentation in this on what Russia is doing, how they are doing it, and the depth and the width of what it is that they are doing. A lot, and they described some of the tactics. Some of them were way outside of my pay grade for sure. After that, they did a question and answer session, which was even more fascinating. Now, this was for individuals, companies, corporations that are trying to protect themselves. Then today, they did a 6-hour seminar in Washington, D.C., they meaning CERT / Department of Homeland Security, a 6-hour seminar on very much the same thing, but this was a person kind of an auditorium style that was free to attend. So what I'm seeing here is non-government agencies that are cyber experts, and there's a bunch of them. I follow a bunch of them. And then there are inside government experts that are really trying to reach out and have a two-way dialogue on what is truly happening. This tells me that whatever China, Russia, Iran, and the rest are doing to us, it's much worse than we possibly know, especially given the effort the government is doing in all of this. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Donna's got some relatives that are in that world in the corporate sector, and you know who I'm talking about. I'm not going to mention what type of relative or their names, but you know who I'm talking about with regard to that. And they are very, very, very deep into this, and it's a very, very serious matter. You're absolutely right.
It
doesn't
really
get talked
is
about enough.
And it's pretty fascinating with the stories that I post over at founderscode.com. Any of those stories that I have that regard Russia or China in the cyber realm probably are the least read of anything that I put out there. But I'm going to stay with it because, it's not sexy. It's not National Enquirer type headlines when you talk about the infections that we're getting from these rogue countries into our own country. But
all right, and how are you tagging those articles so that the listeners can find them? Are you tagging them cyber?
I do, and I use several tags, meta tags. I use several subject matter categories, and then I try pretty hard to make the headline something that's at least enticing enough to click on it and people, they read the headline and maybe they'll read the first 2 sentences and they feel like they know the story, which is hardly the case. But I'm telling you, Don,
and that really twists your undies, doesn't it? I know it does.
It does. Because I work pretty hard.
One of the two.
I work pretty hard at putting things in context and telling the whole story and not just, some piece part, that looks like it has some kind of political agenda.
While we're talking about this, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to go to this website Denise keeps mentioning. It's her own personal site, founderscode.com. Founderscode.com. And when you go to that site, I say this every week, but put your email address in the little window that says to subscribe, and every time she posts an article, you will get a neatly packaged email that'll come to your inbox with that article in it. That way you can save them. You can go back to them when you're sitting on the toilet or whatever you do where you read your news, and you can read the stuff at your leisure. All right, Denise, do you mind if we trot over to Iran for a second?
Well, before we get to that, I want to tell you just another one that I posted tonight. And that is, you remember we had the 4 cases in Britain where 4 people were poisoned with Novichok.
Yeah.
3 of the 4 survived, 1 died.
Right.
The laboratory that Britain uses, there's one in London, in a London suburb, but there's another one, I think it's in Switzerland. Come to find out, Mr. Don, Russia has even hacked that second laboratory. Just was announced. So that tells you there is no target that is off limits for where Russia is going to deploy some cyber army. To see what the rest of the world is doing or saying about them. But okay, we'll try.
Russia takes cyber war very seriously, and I pray to God that it appears accurate that the Trump administration is doing the same thing, because some of these other countries, like we mentioned, North Korea, China, Iran, Russia, they are taking this very seriously, and they are honing their skills at epic levels, don't you think?
Yes. As witnessed. I mean, can you imagine how embarrassed Sandberg is, who's the chief operating officer at Facebook, how embarrassed she really is to have to come out and make this statement of what Facebook just uncovered?
I don't know whether elite liberals do get embarrassed, to be honest with you.
It's going to hurt the stock price, and they know it.
Yeah, but, they'll blame it on something else.
Well, but she didn't, and she's accountable to the stockholders.
I just haven't seen too many elite liberals grow a set of stones and accept accountability for their errors. Mm-hmm. So maybe she'll stand out among the rest of the pack. All right, let's trot to the land of turbans. What's going on over in Iran?
Well, President Trump has decided that he thought it would be prudent to say that he would, and he said it in passing, be happy to meet with Rouhani or any of the Iranian leadership on a détente kind of condition without precondition. Fine, but we've already opened up 2 channels to 2 rogue countries, and we haven't resolved all those issues yet. I'm not sure that you'd want to throw in a third. That puts incredible resources that we have at a handicap because they're already working 2 tracks. And then it was rather fascinating that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo did come out in his own way. He's very pro-Trump, but in his own way, he went, these are preconditions, and he listed them. So there's a little bit of a mixed message between the White House and the State Department when it comes to Iran. But here's what's happening in Iran, and a lot of people don't understand this. Iran's currency is called the rial, and it is tanked completely to the point where what is going on in Iran is very much what's like going on in Bolivia or Nicaragua or Venezuela. I mean, they're going through their own kind of civil war protests kind of things, to the point where Iran financially is so badly off at this point that they're even considering rationing food. Now, we got out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, otherwise known as the nuclear deal. With that, there are snapback sanctions that will happen by the United States. The United States has not applied those snapback sanctions. In fact, the first round of snapback sanctions happens, I think, at the end of August. And then 90 days later, the second round of snapback sanctions happens. So Iran is in a little bit of a panic because of those snapbacks. And
all right, hold on a second. What did they do or not do to cause their dollar to plummet as it has of recent?
Well, I don't know there's a single answer to that question. We are finding that
they've stuck themselves with a knife, and by the United States pulling out of this bogus ass, I think I can say that, treaty, that's going to be the twisting of the knife a few times and the pressing of it even further into the belly of Iran, correct?
Yes, and now the United States, through all kinds of channels, is putting pressure on the other signatories to the nuclear deal, meaning Europe, especially Germany and France, because it's going to cause some real implications for them. And we are proving day after day after day on all of the nefarious activities, including, I might say, counterfeiting currency, and things going on in Yemen, and things going on in Iraq, and things going on in Syria, where when Barack Obama and John Kerry told us that Iran is going to be a good neighbor to the world, and especially in the Middle East, that has proven to be de facto as false as any statement that has ever been made by the Obama administration. And those proven factors that are especially coming from the SWIFT banking system in those investigations, and tracking weapons that are being shipped, seizing cargo ships that have the weapons in their cargo holds, arming the Houthis and all these other kinds of factions, they're proving to European leaders, you guys are idiots and you need to get out of this nuclear deal too. And
are they listening?
They're listening for sure, but they're almost embarrassed. And now it's kind of like they don't know what to do. They know that the United States is right, but there's some other yin and yang. There's some other tug and pull problem that's going on there. And I would argue that it has probably everything to do with oil. They've probably signed these deals in order to buy Iranian oil for much, much less than what it is sold for by the barrel on the open market. So they, in a desperation to stockpile oil reserves in their home countries.
That's what happens when you sleep with the enemy.
Well, we've done it too. But nonetheless, Germany, I would say, is probably the larger of any of the problems in the European countries. In fact,
well, and Trump called her out, especially with regard to Russia. And the mainstream media had a field day over that when Trump called Merkel out for exactly what she is.
Well, he was really calling her out on the NATO side, but Germany actually has an embassy in Iran, and Iran has got several front companies in Germany. And we are finding where these front companies, to evade sanctions and any kind of trail, if you will, these front companies, these bogus companies with funky currency, even perhaps counterfeit currency, forged documents, and all these other kinds of things are all happening in Germany. So Merkel probably has more egg on her face than we can even begin to describe. So if I were Trump when he was speaking with Merkel, I don't know whether he confronted her on some of these things, but I can tell you the other channels out of the State Department were conferring with their counterparts in Germany and in France. Britain is not too big of a problem because Britain right now, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know whether to fish or cut bait because they're going through obviously the Brexit thing.
All right, hang on a second. I want to take a minute and at least voice my opinion on the absolute great Secretary of State that we've got. I don't know if you feel as strongly about Pompeo as I do, but I was so impressed and have been so impressed with what he's been doing, how he's been handling himself. But when he sat in front of that congressional hearing and took the lashing that he did and responded so damn well against people like Menendez, I am grateful that we've got Mike Pompeo as our Secretary of State. You may disagree.
I do not.
Grateful.
I do not disagree. I will be the first one to say on 2 occasions I was wrong. I did not think that Nikki Haley had the stones to be the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, coming from a governorship, and she has proven to be a champion position. And her role has been beyond stellar as the UN ambassador to the United Nations.
Who is she getting her advice from?
Well, all along, I think she was getting it from Bolton.
I think so too.
And then when it came to Pompeo, when he was head of the CIA, I was very, very happy with that. When they fired Rex Tillerson and Trump decided to put him at state, I was okay with it, but I'd prefer him not to have done that, because I felt like we needed to have some real stability that he was beginning to bring back in rehabilitating CIA after John Brennan. So I was not a big fan of that decision. But knowing that we brought in Gina Haspel and who she was, and now that she has been confirmed at the agency, and that what Pompeo is doing, it's almost like it was a perfect moment after leaving CIA, and going over to state. I think gave Pompeo a particularly better edge at being Secretary of State. So my initial knee-jerk reaction on both of those people was a real hesitation, and I'm glad I was wrong on that one.
Me too. Well, and you weren't necessarily wrong. You were going on your gut vibe, using information that you've been compiling for quite some time. And it was a very valid concern. What ended up happening is it worked out just right. And things are starting to gel in those areas, I think. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time. It's been a ball being with you tonight. It's been a really big show, don't you think, Denise?
I do.
And ladies and gentlemen, you have my promise. You have my promise that I will investigate the origin of Denise Simon's skin tone over the next week or so. We will not let this drop. We will not let this go to rest. We will get to the bottom of who she is portraying herself to really be. Denise, take us home, my girl.
Thanks for being with us, everybody. God bless America.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.